Welcome back to another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. Today we have a repeat guest. It's been a while. We have Niklas Anzinger. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Niklas Anzinger, founder and CEO of Infinita, which is based in Prospera in Honduras. Niklas, how you doing, man?
Fantastic, man. It's great to be back.
Absolutely. Are you in Honduras right now?
Yeah, I'm there right now. So now I'm living in our new apartment in the Duna Tower that got finished 6 months ago.
The Duna Tower. Tell people about the Duna Tower. I've seen some photos and stuff on Twitter. It's like the tallest building on the island of Roatán, something like that.
Yeah, it's the tallest building on the island. And for anyone who hasn't seen the past episode, Roatán is an island. It's a Caribbean island, and it's part of the country of Honduras, but it's not very reminiscent of mainland Honduras. It has a rather higher standard of living. It has an international airport, and it has sort of a bit better amenities than typical Central America. And Prospera is building a special economic zone on Roatán. And it's a tropical paradise there, and it aims to build kind of a Singapore for Central America there. And the Duna Tower that you mentioned was built for the last 2 years, and it finished 6 months ago. It's the largest tower in the island, 14 stories. It's intended to be a compact living facility, right? So you can live there, you have apartments, but you also have a co-working space. We now have a lab and a clinic in there. There is a coffee shop. We're doing a small grocery store. There's a gym. And now there's a pool area where you can hang out and do barbecue. And we even have a drone landing platform on top for food deliveries.
Drone landing pad for food deliveries.
Mm-hmm.
And where would those be coming from?
So they could either come from the main grocery shop on the island, which is called Eldon's. They could come from another place in Roatán in the Prospera jurisdiction. I think the drone company we're talking to could even go as far as to La Ceiba, but I might be mistaken about that.
That'd be pretty epic. That's pretty far to deliver some bananas, but okay, cool. So you're on the island. I managed to find it on Google Maps, Duna Residences, so it's made it there. Crawfish Rock.
Yeah, that's the neighboring village.
Awesome. Well, yeah, man, I would love for you to just kind of tell us a little bit about what you got going on lately, because I think the last time we talked, it was a while back. I mean, it was within the first 100 episodes. I want to say episode 60 something. I could look it up, but I'm sure a lot's changed. Bring us up to speed.
Sure. And just to, again, for someone who hasn't listened to the last episode, so why Roatán, why Prospera, why Infinita? So many of you are probably coming to this podcast because they're looking for like liberty, better taxes, better quality of life for the work you do, especially if it's remote work and digital work. Mm-hmm. And Roatán should definitely be on the map for you if you're really interested, if you're really entrepreneurial, right? So on the island, we do like crypto, we do biotech, and we do like, advanced healthcare things, like the drones that I mentioned, or we have robotic stuff here. So if you're into that, if you're like really into frontier tech, or if you're a techno optimist, then it's really the ideal place. And so in the last episode, we probably talked about the political challenges in Honduras. So that's something that is on top of mind, right? So what we're doing is quite a novel thing, and it has like a lot of history. It's sort of the special economic zone is in the history of things like Dubai or of Shenzhen, China, or of Hong Kong. So these kind of reforms that could lead to rapid economic development in a country. But unfortunately, about 3 years ago, Honduras elected a government which is on the far left that is hostile to, capitalism and economic development. So we had to deal with that for the past 2 years. And I started my work as a venture capitalist here to make sure that we're still growing, and also with the conviction that startups and young entrepreneurs still have the right risk profile to make a bet on this, right? Because if this works, which is my original bet, this would have a civilizational scale impact. And since 2 years ago, yes?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, what is the deal? What's the latest on the government stance? Because I remember it's like they were going to shut down all the ZEDs and economic zones, but then there was talk of they were going to sort of grandfather in the ones that were already existing, which is kind of you guys, and then maybe Ciudad Morazan. Are they grandfathering you guys, or are they going to let you, or it's kind of like in a legal battle, or
Yeah.
tell us what's up with that?
So it is an illegal battle, an illegal and political battle, more so than legal, right? So the major change was that a couple of months ago, there was a ruling by the Honduran Supreme Court that in a narrow 8-7 vote declared ZEDEs unconstitutional retroactively. So that's the key part, right? So under normal legal assumptions, our rights would be grandfathered in, but that ruling said it applies retroactively,
Mm.
which is not only a violation of most legal norms anywhere in the world, but also a blatant violation of the Honduran constitution itself, right? So there's a whole thing that allows this to happen. It was certainly a political move. Some of the actors involved are international sanctions list and are sort of some of the hardcore leftists that have been handpicked by the government. So, and there's also, corruption going on and things like that. But it happened. So, what was our reaction? There was several fold, and the short story is that we believe we're in a very good position right now, right? And there's several reasons for that. First off, there is kind of legal arguments that that ruling is not even valid, right? So we can still operate the way we were promised we could under the ZA rights. In practice, the company is kind of built in some legal defenses and are prepared to also operate under ordinary Honduran laws. We're waiting then for a political change, right? So there's going to be elections in Honduras by the end of the year. The
Nice.
current government is very unpopular. And if it is a fair election, we're almost certainly going to get them out and get a friendly administration, right? So we have done the political groundwork to align with any future administration that would then get our rights back. And also, thirdly, what really came to our advantage was the US election, right? So the President Trump and picks like Marco Rubio as Secretary of State are indicating that we can expect a foreign policy that's much more in line with defending American interests abroad, which is, and most of the investors here in this project are American, right? And under the previous administration, this wasn't that strongly enforced. And now there's a very large perception that this will change. Marco Rubio is also known to have like a very strong combative stance against Latin American dictators and authoritarianism. So and this has had a very real impact on the ground, on the perceptions of the political actors we're dealing with. So it's made things more quiet, and certainly from their side, from the government side, and also engendered a lot of optimism on our side. So nobody has left. And in fact, we're growing. The Duna Tower is full.
It's full.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. How many like units is it?
It's 80 units. I think not all are actually occupied simply because for some it's like an investment object and we haven't been able to rent all units. But I'm pretty sure we have at least 60, maybe even 70 units rented out, right? So we have about 30 long-term residents in normal circumstances. And right now we also have a pop-up city going on, right? So similar to a year ago, we're bringing over the next couple of weeks, several hundreds of people, some of them staying a longer period of time, some a shorter period of time. We also have very big guests, right? So last time we had Balaji Srinivasan, Naval Ravikant, or Brian Johnson.
Yeah.
And this time we're expecting some similar calibers. So we do conferences and summits on longevity biotech, on crypto cities, and on human enhancements and things like that. So it's buzzing.
How did you get those guests? Like that is A-list guests.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of work leading up to it, right? So there were definitely a couple of things falling into place. One was we just came directly after the Zuzalu pop-up city by Vitalik Buterin, which had made headwaves, right? So people knew what pop-up cities were, and we were kind of the next big thing. On top of that, what we do is simply very aligned with the ideas of some of these people, right? So Brian Johnson came to get the gene therapy. Balaji Srinivasan had already been an investor in Prospera and later also became an investor in Infinita, right? So, with his network state book, this is his major project. And now Ravikant, for example, was is an investor in the gene therapy company, who made the therapy that Brian Johnson then took. And in addition to that, so what I mentioned, Zuzalu, we've also been able to capture the attention of much of the longevity and biotech community. So all these things came together as sort of a very promising way how we can accelerate technological development, right? So I think the last couple of years, the ideas that we want to accelerate technology, effective accelerationism, which culminated in things like the Doge of Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. So these are all ideas that have kind of been boiling the last couple of years. And I feel like now and the last couple of months and the last year, also with Javier Milei in Argentina, for example, are kind of really reaching the mainstream. And there's a real inflection point going on.
Yeah. It might derail us a bit, but I want to ask a bit about this because I think it's just kind of funny because, they're a little bit like pampered Silicon Valley guys, whatever. What was the story of them getting to the island? I guess they flew in, you picked them up at the airport. They're like sweating buckets, swatting mosquitoes. How was that?
Yeah, it's pretty much how you described. I mean, it's not super hard to get here anyway, right? So you fly from San Francisco to Houston or to Miami and then here. So not the biggest of deals. Also, the transportation options are not too bad here. And, the people here that came were actually quite resilient. Of course, you have a couple of, edge cases. But overall, I think the message was quite clear to people. We're really building a new frontier. And so some lack of amenities in some sense can be expected. And I think relatively speaking, I think it even exceeded the expectations of most people. Because when people hear the story and hear like Honduras, they're expecting something sort of very low end in terms of amenities. And it's actually not true, right? So if you come to Pristine Bay, where Prospera bought this resort, these are amenities where you can comfortably put A-listers, right? So the Las Verandas Villas, for example, where some of these A-listers stayed, they are up to standard for the most part, right? So, the main criticism we got was more like around the management of the restaurant, which is like too slow and things like that. So these are things that are still to be
management of the out. What? The restaurant?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So like the staff is like too slow and sort of not customer friendly enough and things like that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
But overall, it is up to a very good standard.
The derail there. I think one thing people would be interested to hear about is about Infinita, Vitalia Infinita, and why this additional branding or entity is needed separate from Prospera. And I guess basically how Prospera and Infinita work together, what makes them different, where's the kind of delineation?
Yeah, sure. So we often like to say, and it was actually an observation that Balaji made, that Prospera is kind of a layer one that establishes a degree of sovereignty, right? So they doing the diplomacy, they have like the legal agreements in place with host countries like Honduras. And then we have a layer two, which is Infinita. We're bringing the people, we're bringing the community, we're building an industry. So one layer one, Prospera, can have many layer twos. And the reason for that is simply that there's always a lot of urgency on the political side. So if there's like something going on Honduran mainland, if there's like PR, that's always the first priority over like bringing people, raising excitement, building community in the way that someone can do that's not sort of hampered by these kinds of political backlashes. And we were just able to fill a gap there. Right. So with my work with the Infinita Fund and then later with the Vitalia pop-up city and now Infinita City, we also like to say a district within the city. Right. So Prospera is building the city, we're building a district, we're bringing companies and people that use the layer one and that are building a specific industry, in our case, biotech and crypto.
Okay. So Infinita is in Prospera.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're physically here. We have like long-term leases for the co-working space and for more than 30 Duna units. And that's where we bring in our community, where we plug in. And then we help these people that we bring start companies in Prospera, right? So we help them like with the legal advice. We have a network of investors. So we help them and give them training when it comes to fundraising and pitching. We present them to investors and we kind of get advisory agreements and equity in some of these startups as a result.
Awesome. And another random question. Remind me, you're from Europe, right? What country are you from?
From Germany originally.
From Germany. Okay, I was gonna say a little more east. Okay. Okay. Are there a lot of Germans there as well?
Germans are not really that prevalent here. No, it's kind of a mix. I mean, for the most part, it's really Latin, right? So the biggest number, or the biggest constituent is obviously Hondurans, right? So I have a
Hmm.
company with 20 people, and 16 of them are from Honduras, right? And
Really?
then, yeah, I mean,
Working
I
on
had,
like in the engineering roles and stuff?
yeah. So including my co-founder and CTO, right? And he then, found the best engineers in the country. So it was a lot of work, right? So I had to really do a lot to find like the best talent in the country, because to be able to build a VC funded a tech company, you really need to attract the best talent. But the good thing is, or the unlock is, once you found one or two of them, they know all the others, right?
Right.
So that really helped. And then the other ones who are living here, of course, a lot of Americans. Surprisingly, you might think in biotech, there's a lot of Russians and Eastern Europeans, right? So
Mm.
Russia has some of the best scientists in the world in that field.
Mm.
A couple of Europeans from different countries, but it's really random. And now we're increasingly also getting Argentinians and Brazilians, right? So
Mm.
especially in Brazil, there's increasingly a community forming that has like super fans and that sends people there regularly, and has some people also living there and staying there.
Awesome. And I believe you have an event that's already underway. Tell us about the event.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's a pop-up city. So pop-up city was the idea was originated by Vitalik Buterin, bit less than 2 years ago, and we did the first Vitalia pop-up city last year, and now we do the Infinita Forever pop-up city. So what you can imagine is it's basically like a
The
university
forever
campus.
pop up.
Yeah, exactly. It's different from other pop-ups, not just a nomad lifestyle experience. It can be that too, but it's also a gateway to attract people to build a permanent city here with us. Um, what it means for you is, if you want to visit, and you can, right? So you can go to infinita.city and you can do shorter and long-term visits. And what it is for you, it's basically a university campus on steroids, right? So if you enjoyed your experience at university, if you like very intellectual, you have people here that are even more deeper into the stuff and even more aligned, right? And it's kind of an experience of living with the same people and like having debates all the time. You run into people who know and do really interesting stuff. So any conversation in the hallway that you jump into can be something that really changes your life. Um, and in our case, it's a bit more focused on builders, right? So like developers, crypto people, and now also biotech people.
And it's a multi-month pop up.
Exactly. So it is 2 months is sort of the regular pop up. And the way it works is it's not one curated event. It's not that I'm managing everything and like the schedule. It's what's called a decentralized event. So whoever comes, you can organize your own event. So some of the best events we had last time, for example, a biohacker house, was developed from community members. We provide a bit of a structure, right? So we have three themes. One is longevity biotech, crypto cities, and human enhancement. And there is conferences that are attracting short-term visitors, and we bring some of these big speakers that I mentioned. Right, and in between there's time, right? So people can focus on building their business, and many of the people that are coming here also have remote work, so they have sort of enough time and not too many distractions, so they can also keep doing heads down work. And then on top of that, in March, we're doing what's called a builder's residency. So if you're a startup, or you're looking to do a startup or find a co-founder and get that sort of ready for investment or accelerate, that is the right time for you. So during that time, we provide sort of dedicated accelerator type sessions, ending or culminating in a demo day where we're inviting our investors.
Okay. And when's demo day?
Demo day is on March 30.
Okay. So that's kind of the climactic event of the pop up.
Yeah.
And how many startups are you planning on having presenting at the demo day?
So we usually have 20 people, 20 startups presenting, which is really, they're really highly selected at that point, because we have several hundreds in our network by now.
Really?
Yeah.
20 is a pretty good amount because how long is the pitch? Like a 3 minute
To be
pitch?
fair, not all these startups are local, right? So I'd say we have about maybe 15 to 20 startups here local right now,
Hmm.
right? So we're also allowing or inviting people or startups that don't live there, right? So these have preference, and sometimes there's also really promising startups that live in other places, like in San Francisco or in Austin, that we also let present remotely. But predominantly, and I think the last demo day we only had in-person startups.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, and people presenting for about 10 minutes. Sometimes we cut it down to 5 minutes. And and yeah, so very short and sweet. Like that's just if you do a startup, that's what you should be able to pitch your business in 5 minutes or less.
Okay. And I believe you said there's like sort of like a on island VC fund or a Prospera VC fund, something like that.
So Infinita actually started as a VC fund. So
Mm.
I have a VC fund called Infinita VC, and then we added the Vitalia pop up city, and then later we grew that into Infinita City, which is a separate entity technically, but in the future that might be merged. But Infinita VC is there to fund some of these startups that are here and has invested so far already in 30 startups. Um, I
Wow.
think about 10 of which are here or at least are regularly doing things here or have some sort of business advantage as a result from this.
Hmm. Is there any precedent to that, a VC firm founding a city, or do you think you're the first?
I mean, Prospera is the one founding the city, right? So,
Yeah. Well,
with
you
the
say Infinite City. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, Prospera is the main city builder, and with Infinita, I'm bringing a lot of people, which are an important component, a part of the city. I think, and that might be the first one of this kind, actually.
And how much have you? Is it just one fund, or are you already on like fund
Yeah,
two or something?
yeah. It's one fund. It's not a big fund, right? So it's like 3.5 million, but it had like Balaji in or Tim Draper in, who are like very big names. Um,
Mhm.
And right now, we're not raising a second fund yet. That might be in the next year, simply because now we're building a startup and we really want to get the tech and infrastructure ready, right? So, for example, we have this access pass that's like your residency in Infinita City, and that unlocks sort of your access to the economy here, which we want to build on crypto, right? So we're building this stable coin that you can use for transactions within the city, and that then
Mhm.
incentivizes usage of the local vendors that we integrate in our ecosystem. So this way we kind of capture a percentage of the economy and the transactions that are going on here. And also by using the stable coin, you'll be able to earn a token that's tied to the value of Infinita, right? So this is kind of the tech that we're building right now mainly. So in the meantime, we help these startups get introductions to the investors in our network. So for example, a big investor in our network is Adam Draper and Boost VC. So he funded several us and also several startups in our ecosystem. Another fund will probably raise next year or in 2 years then.
Okay, that's awesome. And oh, so on the VC side of things, I guess you come in as like seed or pre-seed?
Yeah, it's seed or pre-seed. It's pretty early, right? So we're taking a bet on
Mhm.
startups that, yeah,
And then some of your LPs, like the Drapers or Balaji, they could potentially be people who end up leading subsequent rounds.
yeah. To be fair, even those people that you mentioned are also more seed and pre-seed VCs, right? So um, we're a relatively new business, right? So Infinita City has existed for less than a year, right? So
Hmm.
or like the precursor to what we're building at the team. Um, so we don't yet. I wouldn't promise anyone that we have like very strong like Series A plus introduction potential. That hopefully will come with time. But right now we're mostly focusing on pre-seed and seed. And as we go, we'll develop more of a network towards subsequent rounds and Series A plus as well. Yeah.
Gotcha. And are you investing in crypto stuff that's totally unrelated to health? Or does everything kind of have a health, longevity, bio, science kind of angle to it?
Yeah, so those are the two, crypto and biotech. So there's a lot of crypto that is really relevant to building like the whole city, and the whole city is the foundation to the health and biotech industry. Just to give
Hmm.
you one example, One thing that is really a pet peeve of mine, people really underestimate or they don't know how much more important it is actually to get incentives right in healthcare insurance as opposed to like some breakthrough of choice. Why? Because the insurers have an incentive to keep you sick for a period of time during which you pay, especially towards the end of your life. So imagine you'd have a model where you would combine healthcare with life insurance, right? So this way the insurer would have an incentive to keep you alive so they don't have to pay the life insurance premium, right? Um, so you need an insurance industry really to get the incentives right to build a thriving healthcare city. And there is startups now, and I've invested in one that I'm very proud of. It's called Insuro. It's an entrepreneur from Argentina who's building a reinsurance pool from crypto liquidity providers, right? So he's plugged in into things like Aave, right? So where you can borrow crypto permissionlessly. So he's having that in the reinsurance pool so others can build insurance solutions on top. So this is like a perfect example of how we need sort of the legal arbitrage and the crypto to build much of the healthcare solutions we need.
Okay, that's a little bit complex. I think I have to simmer on that for a second, but sounds like some good innovation. Awesome. And so just give us an example. Like, what do you have going on, say, this week, next week, related to the pop-up city and everything?
Yeah, so these days there's a lot of sessions that are organized by participants, right? So we don't have much official programming this and next week. And afterwards, February 3 to 9 is when we have the Crypto Cities Theme Week, which is, in our experience from last year, will be the busiest time. And we also have some very big name guests, right? So we have Samo Borgia, Antonio Garcia Martinez, we have David Johnston, Alain Bertot, and we might get like a very big A-list of a similar caliber as last time as well that I can't announce yet. So that's the busiest time. So if you consider visiting, I would say early February is the best time. End of February, we also have the Human Enhancement Week. And this week and next week, what we have regularly going on is the Roatán Institute of Technology, which is an academic program that's led by leading professors in aging biology and quantum biology and in the economics of science. So there's lectures going on every day. Also, the lab is quite active. So the lab here in Makerspace is where you can kind of tinker things together. And now they even added sort of a wet lab where you can grow like food and where they make their own kombucha and things like that. So that's a lot of fun. And we're doing a lot of that this week.
And I believe you had invited me out for like maybe the kickoff launch event type of thing that was first week of January.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we're recording this January 23rd. For people wondering, this will probably come out like 2 weeks from now. Still ample time for people to get their tickets and flights and all that for the demo day, and a lot of that stuff in February and March, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. What should I be asking you about?
Yeah, I'm curious. What are your thoughts on what's going on kind of in Latin America broadly and like the political trends? And I'm asking because I kind of feel like this is hopefully part of a bigger movement, right? So with some of the things we see in El Salvador and Argentina and also now in the United States, I think this is a really significant moment in time. Is anything that you've seen or that you?
Well, you're kind of right next door to El Salvador, right? You guys share a border, Honduras and El Salvador. Have you popped over there and
Yeah. El
checked things
Salvador's
out?
great, and people in Honduras love El Salvador. They want the same thing over there.
I can imagine. So hopefully we get that with the election that's coming up, right?
Yeah.
And what else? When you see what's happening in El Salvador, in part, are you kind of like, damn, I wish I just like built this whole thing in El Salvador. It'd be a lot easier.
Yeah, so unfortunately, El Salvador won't let us, right? So, I mean, they want to become a bit more like Singapore, right? So, where our model is a bit more like Dubai. So, Singapore is kind of one central entity and run by a very competent administration. And I have optimism that El Salvador can achieve the same thing. I'm confident in the president, in Bukele. But Dubai is different. So in Dubai, you have 30 different special economic zones that are competing.
This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by Crema Social. Crema Social is like TikTok for international dating. It's an app you can download right now on your phone, and 3 out of 4 people on Crema are single women. The app was founded in Colombia, so unsurprisingly, there are a lot of Latinas on the app, by the way. So how does it work? Crema Social is a social meal experience where you invite a hot girl for a lunch date via video call and food delivery. New concept, so you'll have to try it out for yourself, but this is probably the best way to meet Latinas before you visit the country. So if you're in Latin America or planning to visit Latin America, download Crema Social now and start getting dates right away. There will be a link in the description to download, or just search Crema Social on your favorite app store. Have fun, guys. This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by BitRefill. BitRefill is the best way to spend your crypto in Latin America. Purchase gift cards or mobile refills from more than 3,500 brands in 186 countries instantly, safely, and privately. You can also apply the code MyLatinLife at checkout to get 10% back on your first purchase. Go to bitrefill.com for more information. This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by Job Stacking. If you are a remote or hybrid worker looking to maximize your earning potential, then Rolf Haltze, the author of Job Stacking, guarantees you'll be able to double your income. This is the exact system Rolf has used to take his own income and those of many others beyond $20K a month. So what is job stacking? It's this idea of working multiple remote jobs. You might have heard Rolf, he's worked 5, 7, even 9 remote jobs at the same time before. And by the way, job stacking works equally well for non-technical roles. So no, it's not just for the nerds. So if you're ready to job stack, then book a discovery call with Job Stacking and see how they can double your income in just 9 weeks. In the show notes in the description, there will be a link where you can book a call directly on the Calendly of Job Stacking and be talking with them as early as tomorrow about how to double your income as quickly as possible.
So we'd require kind of political buy-in to have that kind of model. I think the lower likely better candidate for this is Argentina, right? So in Argentina, and Javier Milei is more interested in this kind of development. But I still see it as part of the same movement towards better governance, sort of more capable leaders that provide stability and rule of law, and also open up economically and sort of instead of sort of reverting to populism and protectionism and things like that.
Definitely makes sense. And I imagine like you're getting pretty good engineering talent for, of course, a fraction of what that would cost in the US, right? And I'm sure they're like super psyched about what they're working on, the local Hondurans.
Yeah, for sure. In fact, that's I think one of the things that motivates me the most. I love building teams, and the talent I found is incredible. Again, as I mentioned, it took a while, but now my CTO and my chief of staff are from Honduras, right? And the CTO is 27, and my chief of staff is 22, right? I hired her when she's 20, and I saw like, okay, she's super talented. And initially, she wasn't that much like into the whole thing, right? So she was skeptical, like many Hondurans. But then over time, they become like super fans, and they like tell everyone, tell their friends, and now like they're the face for this in the country. And that is super encouraging to see because, after like 5 or 6 years when they worked for the company and have been exposed to investors like Tim Draper or Balaji Srinivasan or whatever, they can attach that to their resume. They have collected that kind of experience, then they can build great companies that can raise from some of the same people. And they've been going through what it takes to build sort of a very high growth tech startup. So that I think is really what motivates me the most, that it could change this country so much and for the better, right? Because, right now there's just not a lot of hope, right? Honduras is a place that, people really neglect and that is really not known for any positive news stories, and that affects people, right? So it doesn't make people think that, hey, when I look at Elon Musk or any of these people in Silicon Valley, people are not thinking like that's me. They would think like that's far away, and any hope or anything like that would be totally crazy. But that's what it could be right now, right? So this is, you have access here to that kind of attention, the kind of talent and opportunities that could make you grow into something like that, and now also capital, right? So you can raise money the way people do it in San Francisco and in Silicon Valley. So I think that could just, that could just be totally like amazing in so many ways for the country, and also hopefully introduce a new model for development, because you can do this in many other poor places around the world, right? So I've been to Tanzania, for example, and in any of these places, you have a tech community, right? So you have people who can code, and people who listen to like the All In podcast, and they look at like Elon Musk and they're like amazing, and they speak English, right? So these communities are often small, but this is often where you find some of the best talent, right? And tech entrepreneurs are able to have an outsized impact on their country and sort of create a new culture, because after they've done successful tech companies, they teach others and they invest, right? And so in Latin America, you've seen that with the Rappi Mafia, for example, right? So, or with Mercado Libre, right? So many of the best entrepreneurs in Latin America sort of came from some of the early teams like the Rappi Mafia, right? And have, this way transformed many of their countries, like Colombia, for example, or Uruguay.
Mexico too. We've definitely had a couple episodes with different LATAM based VCs, so people can go check the back catalog a bit. Random question: how does money work in Honduras? Like, do you find yourself using Honduran banks, or are you using U.S. banks, or something else? Lots of crypto.
Yeah, that's actually a very good and fun question, because that was actually one of the first problems that we had when we had the hostile government come into power 2 years ago, because they basically told the banks, don't work with these guys, right? So, and they did not, right? So right now, if you have an entity in Prospera, it's very hard to get a bank account in Honduras. For me as an individual, that's possible, but for a corporate entity, it isn't really. So as a result, the businesses here had been forced to do one of two things. One is to work with offshore banks, right? So there's like this bank from Panama, Tower Bank, that most of us are using, but offshore banks are insanely regulated. So the KYC and the sign-up process with them is just atrocious. And also the product experience with them as a result, and the fees are really bad. So the other alternative is really go directly to crypto, which is what many of us are doing. So many of our transactions, most of our transactions internally, we do in crypto. So any transactions between us and Prospera, there's already a Bitcoin community where you can pay with sats. And now we're increasingly introducing like Solana or Polygon or Ethereum-based stablecoins for transactions. So I pay my car rental this way. And one thing to mention, which is really cool, which really shows you the power of the legal system. So I've bought this apartment that we're sitting in right now in crypto, right? Not only that, I used a loan in crypto to buy this apartment, right? So there is this product that's called Aave, AAVE, and you can go on Aave and put down your Bitcoin or your Ethereum as collateral, and then you can borrow other cryptos against it. You'd recommend stable coins, right? Because you don't want it to go up in value and repay much more. And it's totally your own responsibility, like gives you these liquidation thresholds. And if you're under collateralized or the collateral sinks below a certain value, then the smart contract cashes you in. But in that whole process, which you can set up in like 2 minutes, there's no single intermediary. You don't interact or need a permission from anyone or any bank. And that happens in 2 minutes. That will just blow your mind, that you can get like a bank loan without an intermediary, completely permissionlessly. And that's what I then used as a loan to buy this apartment. So, and this is again something, because many of these things would be difficult in other jurisdictions, right? So here it's very easy for me to set up an entity and sort of have a formal mortgage with my own company, my own holding company. So this would be harder elsewhere. Also, sort of paying the money in crypto would be harder elsewhere. It's probably not a big deal to like get fiat for it, but it would have payment fees, and also would disallow something like that at a larger scale, right? Because once you have like large funds for real estate that invest like millions, then these fees like add up, are like too large, or there's like compliance requirements in some of the payments that would be sort of much easier to do here. And then on top of it, this opens up the opportunity that you could like have this apartment, like the real estate or also like land titles, be represented on the blockchain, and then borrow money against that. And that is really difficult elsewhere because the legal systems like don't allow that or are not made for that. So I think this is like, if you're really into crypto, this should really be the frontier where you should be looking at for these kind of things.
And what do you guys do for payroll?
Yeah, so I'm using right now mostly that Panamanian bank actually, because many of my employees, they want like lempiras, right? So some of them are accepting crypto, including myself. But right now we're still relying on some access to the local banking system.
And how does the Panamanian bank pay people in Honduran currency? You're sending like wires or something?
Yeah, it's just normal Swift and wires. They have pretty high fees. So I'm really looking for an
Yeah,
alternative
seriously, it's
solution.
costing you like, I don't know, $50 just to like send the
Yeah,
paycheck.
yeah. I mean, the ideal solution is really where it just doesn't matter, right? So we send something, the payroll to someone in whatever, and they get it in whatever they want, right? So there are some people working on solutions like that, but that's kind of why we have these events like the crypto cities and also like the builder residencies. So the ideal startups that we want to fund are ones that solve like concrete problems that we have here. So there's one startup, for example, from Argentina called Coral Finance that is working exactly on that sort of on and off ramp problem, and onboarding providers right here to solve that.
Very cool. Let's talk a bit about like relocation. So if someone's listening to this, they're thinking about coming down to Roatán and Prospera. What advice would you have for that person?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because it's kind of also the main sort of bottleneck. And I'm always wondering, I'm just using my own psychology. And my psychology was like, I can be there at day one when there's like another like Dubai or another Singapore or another Hong Kong. I can be there on day one. That's like the coolest thing ever. Sign me up, right? So, but it seems that most people don't like really have the same psychology, right? So it seems it's harder to imagine for people when they like have kids or they're in school or whatever. I mean, it's probably not all too different with moving to Latin America, right? I guess you have like your asset in one place and have like certain commitments that you made, so you're like less flexible and mobile. So the people that are rather attracted, but still, I think even if you have kids, like I mean, don't fall like for the traps that the fiat system set up for you, or like many of the things that you're saying, like all the costs for like all the kindergartens, all the healthcare, and like bring your kids to school in a place like the United States. You could have it so much better in Latin America, right? So many of these services are so much cheaper. You can compensate some of these things with homeschooling, which make you more flexible and give you more time with the children. So I think if you're kind of a upstarter and a kind of a bit contrarian and just don't want to do things the same way that it's done in like the United States and other developed countries, if you sort of be attracted to the my Latin life idea, even with a family, even with kids, it could be the right thing for you. In fact, it might be the best thing in the world for you, right? Because, okay, you can be entrepreneurial about starting a new school, right? So this is like a place where, the kind of solutions that you want, you can build them, right? And the system is there to enable that for you. And it's fine, right? So there's a Montessori school. There's like 50 children going to that Montessori school, including local kids, because it's one of the best schools on the island. Right? So there's like daycare options. And as you've seen in other Latin American countries, the daycare options and sort of having a cook at home and things like that, these are all like much cheaper. And there's much more of a service culture in Latin America. And sort of many people have that.
Yeah.
And then other than that, the people that come here, they're just aligned with these kind of ideas in general. Right. So they just want to build something that's different. So they want to be part of creating and building a bit of a different kind of world and a society that they would like to live in. So I think that's the overwhelming experience. And I always recommend like guys, like don't overthink it. If you're like remotely attracted to some of these ideas that you're hearing, just come visit and check it out. Like it's very hard for me to tell everything that's going on. It's much easier for me just to show it to you. And that's kind of also why why we designed the pop-up city in this way. Now you can drop in and you like meet everyone and you kind of feel the energy, and it gives you a taste of what it's like to live here.
Okay, so we got Montessori's, we got kind of all that infrastructure, health insurance, everything people need and worry about.
Exactly. I mean, the one caveat I would say is you just have to be a bit entrepreneurial, right? It's not like there is a pretty good standard here, but just, it's not it's that like millions of people are living here, right? So, having access to, Amazon groceries or like an opera house or something like that, you won't have these things, right? And is there like that much choice of school? No. But that should just compel you to think, okay, how can I contribute to this place to do something that this kind of society or this kind of community need? I think that then it's the right place for you.
I'm just randomly clicking on stuff on the map on the Google Maps for Roatán, and I mean, all the restaurants have like really good ratings.
It's pretty good
You
restaurants.
got Roatán Island Brewing.
Yeah, it's one of my
You ever been
favorites.
there?
Yeah. And even we brought it closer recently to us, right? Because we have this like circular factory right in front of the Duna Tower. It's like a 2-minute walk. And we just opened a small beer garden there with beer from that brewery.
You got a golf course, Pristine Bay, right nearby.
Exactly.
French Harbor is just loaded with restaurants.
Exactly. There's pretty good restaurants. I would say the one thing that we really need something better in is medical services, right? So Roatán's hospital burned down a couple of months ago, right? So there's a couple of clinics, right? So it's not like, that there is no emergency services, but I think we needed something much better there, which is also why we started a clinic here actually in Infinita to provide sort of basic primary care and emergency response services.
That's pretty cool. Was it easy enough to like spin up a clinic? Did you have to get some licenses and stuff and buy equipment and
Yeah, but so there is all that going on, right? So you need licenses, you need to get equipment. It's not an easy feat, right? So it took us 2 months to get it started. But hey, it's 2 months, right? I mean, compare that to anywhere else in the world. And at the same time, there is like licensing, and there is like assessing the quality of the medical professionals, and there is regulations you need to adopt, and like insurance, right? So in case something goes wrong, and then the insurance, is your regulator. That's the whole idea of the model here. So it is not a like Wild West free for all or whatever. It's just designed so so entrepreneurs can just go much faster while sort of having safety and precautionary things in place.
have you been to the Monkey and Sloth hangout?
Oh yeah. I'm not sure which one you're looking at. The one that I like
Daniel
the
Johnson's?
most. I haven't been to that one, but I certainly know that that's not the best one. The best one is called Mayan Eden.
Okay.
At Mayan Eden, it's a much more the local place, and you can hug a sloth there, and you have these monkeys running around. It's really, really fun there.
Mayan, like Mayan?
Exactly. And then Eden, Eden.
Mayan, Eden, Roatán. You heard it here, folks. Okay, it's like a zoo. They got, toucans, all that stuff.
Yeah. And then there's also, of course, the scuba diving, right? So it's one of the best scuba diving destinations in the world. It has the second largest barrier reef after the Great Barrier in Australia. The place, the Anthony's Keys, is also very good for watching or for experiencing dolphins, right? So they treat the animals there very well. So it's a very good place. And also in the west part of the island, you can go out and have fun and do beach parties, right? So there's a couple of nightclubs there.
Dude, this looks so fun. I mean, this island looks sick.
Roatán is sick, honestly. I mean, it's got 1.2 million tourists each year, and it still feels early, right? Because it has the size of Hong Kong. So, this place is up and coming even without us, right? So it's like an early Hawaii.
Yeah, I can see it. I mean, just the sheer density of like fun things to do, it seems, with like beaches and activities and
Yeah.
because it's very thin, right? So it's like thin and long, the island. Um, so it's like you kind of have like amazing views of the water pretty much wherever you are.
Yeah. Some people say it might be the best of the Caribbean islands, even, right? And not only that, it is outside of the Caribbean hurricane zone, right? So it's just at the edge, right? So it's not that there's zero risk of hurricanes, but it's very low. It's outside of the hurricane zone.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's like kind of in a bay there.
Yeah, yeah.
And I imagine there's some marina, so I can have my yacht.
Yeah, of course.
That's awesome.
It's
Does
got
anybody have a
super
yacht?
huge. Yeah, there's super huge cruise ships here and yachts, right? So Mark Zuckerberg's cruise ship was, I'm sure, was here at some point. So it is a major destination also for the biggest cruise liners.
Do you have like a Vespa scooter or something, or how do you get around?
Car, right? So we
Car.
rent. You have a car rental where I pay in crypto.
Okay, and you rent it like on a monthly basis?
Yeah, on a monthly basis.
Okay. How long does it take to drive from one end to the other?
About like 3 hours, maybe.
3 hours. Okay,
Maybe,
that's pretty
maybe
substantial.
4 if you go. So what's when you go towards the eastern part, the roads get really bad, right? So the further towards the west you go, the better the roads are, and the further east you go, the more it's kind of pristine nature, like almost Jurassic Park. But the roads
Mhm.
also get bad.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's like the total there are no roads after a certain point,
Yeah, I
it
mean they
seems.
go almost towards the end. Yeah, towards the end it's getting difficult, or it is at most dirt road.
Okay. This is saying, yeah, 2 hours. I mean, the island just looks like absolute tropical paradise.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's funny because when I tell people I moved to Honduras to build like a sci-fi city, everyone's like, "Oh, that sounds so edgy or so bold, right?" And then I look outside the window and it's like, "Guys, this is paradise." And also, most of like the risk and most of like the political work that made this possible, that is really putting you at a certain risk. That's already been done. It's mainly been done by our Honduran friends, right? So there was a group of Honduran attorneys that made these kinds of laws possible. So they call them the first generation of the founding fathers. So, for example, my good friend Jorge Colindres, who's the mayor of Prospera, he's been the one paving the way for this to happen for more than 10 years, right? So, and he is, always up there with a smile, like even in the face of, people shouting at him, in the Honduran government and their hostilities, and he's there and it's like, guys, we're going to be fine. We're going to make this happen. So it's this like bravery that inspires me, and that I think can make something edgy like this eventually a success.
Are there specific types of people that you're looking for? Like, is there an avatar of person that would be the best fit to come down to Infinita?
Yeah, I mean, I think broadly speaking, your audience probably a good fit, like looking how to have a better life in Latin America, and sort of recognizing that many of the things in developed countries like the United States is just not working for everyone, or you could sort of optimize your life. Right? I think if you're into like optimizing your life, um, then this is definitely a very good thing to look into. I'd say you should be interested in technology, ideally. All right. So if you're into technology, into crypto, and if you don't necessarily need to be like building a VC funded startup or something like that, right? So you can build a traditional business, but at least you should be attracted to that idea space and not like be a
Mhm.
decel or a doomer or something like that, right? So I think these are the most important requirements. And I think the stage of your life really depends. I really think this is a good option for families too, and you don't need to be afraid of that.
Mhm.
But the people that are actively here and coming here are probably between like 25 and 35 mostly, and are kind of upstarts that want to
Mhm.
build their life. Sometimes they come in couples, sometimes they come alone. It's definitely not the heavy male skew that you'd expect. We're actually pretty close to half half.
That's good. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
I could definitely see it being good for families. I mean, sounds like it's safe. You're able to have a maid. There's good accommodations, like beautiful surroundings, stuff to do. Um, Seems like pretty chill for families for sure.
Yeah, yeah. There's a beach to play on. There's even like a playground in the pristine Bay Area, and it depends on what you want your kids to grow up around, right? So, if you want it like in normal schools and like normal social life, then Pristine Bay is probably still fine in many ways, but maybe not like the Duna Tower or the district, because it's greenfield that's coming out of the jungle, right? So I mean, I want to have my kids here. Like, I'd be cool with that. But again, I think the best recommendation is just to come check it out and test drive it a bit.
I mean, chilling with the kids on a tropical beach. I mean, those are good memories,
Yeah.
Okay, and tell me this though: in the summer, do you go back to Germany or to Europe or something? Because it gets pretty humid in the Caribbean in the summer.
It's pretty constant, right? So it doesn't really get worse at any time during the year, right? So the weather is not really an issue or a problem. I stay here, so I plan to be here at least 8 to 9 months a year, right? I really like it here. Actually, every time that I spend time abroad, I kind of miss it, and when I go back, I kind of often regret that I went. I do like colder climates for like hiking and mountaineering sometimes or once in a while, right? Then of course there's like family time in the December, in either the United States where my wife is from or in Germany. So, but I feel that's perfectly compatible.
That's awesome, man. I mean, seems like Paradise seems like a great place to build a startup where, you're going to have support, you're going to have a network, lots of ideas are flowing. And that's where these things happen, right? Like sometimes there's these moments of time where there's this kind of perfect fusion of people and energy and circumstance, right? Like maybe it was like Paris in the 1920s, or I don't know,
Hollywood in the beginning, or Silicon Valley or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. And so I feel like what we're seeing in Prospera has a lot of those elements of right place, right time.
Yep, that's exactly why I'm here.
Awesome, man. Well, let's get to wrapping up. It's pretty much midnight here in Europe, and I got to get up early and do some crazy stuff. So, why don't you take this time to share, final message with the audience, where they can find you, all that good stuff.
Yeah, sure. So you can find me on Twitter, Niklas Anzinger, or Infinita City, right? So Infinita, it's just like infinity, just with an A. Um, and you can also find us under infinita.city, where you can learn about the pop-up city that's going on right now, and you can sign up, right? So this way you can also quickly join our Telegram chat and see who else is there. Again, my call to action for you is to sign up right now for the pop-up city and make some plan to visit us this year. Definitely, ideally before or during February and March.
Infinita. I'm like, it's the Italian spelling.
Yeah,
They got
that
on
was
the
the
Italian
idea
one they
to
have.
to Latinize that a bit. Yeah.
Think of the Italian when they have like the accent that goes that way.
Mm-hmm.
But cool. Well, all the links will be in the description. Highly recommend you guys check it out. This is your reason to go check out Honduras. Knock the country off your list, guys. And by the way, residency in Honduras is actually a pretty cool thing to have. Quick tip here for the audience. I mean, if you get residency in Honduras, you're working towards permanent residency, you're working towards citizenship, and the minimum physical presence requirements are very low to maintain residency. It's 1 day per year. Lots of different pathways to get residency. You can make a bank deposit, you can show passive income, lots of different ways to do it. And at My Latin Life, we can help you get residency in Honduras. And you're a resident of Honduras, right, Nick?
Yep, I went through that process.
You went through the process. You
It's
became a
great, easy.
resident.
I can recommend it.
Nick recommends it. So I think it's actually a pretty underrated Plan B or Plan
And by
A
the way, if you're
residency.
Honduran resident, then you can also be a Prospera tax resident, where that's like
Yes.
very low taxes and no capital gains and lots of things.
Yes. And I believe you have to get
Yeah,
Honduras residency
exactly.
in order to
Yeah,
get
yeah, yeah.
Prospera residency.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty
Correct.
interesting.
You can already be a Prospera e-resident without that, but then you don't get like the full benefits in terms of it being your tax jurisdiction for your personal income or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But you can incorporate businesses still.
I didn't know that. Like, can an e-resident get like an
Yeah.
ID card?
Yeah. So it's basically, is it an ID card? Not sure what you. It's a
Like
bit
a
like
physical card? Can they get a
no,
physical?
no. So it's not that. Um, it's kind of the Estonia model, right? So
Yeah.
like you incorporate a company in Estonia. In fact, it was the team of Estonia that built the Prospera e-residency platform.
Really?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, cool. If you have a guy for that, maybe I should get him on because we had the Jay from Palau,
yeah,
another
yeah,
e-residency on. We were I think the first person to
yeah, yeah,
interview them about the Palau e-residency. So I think it'd be kind of cool
yeah.
to have like
Yeah,
a
check out.
dedicated episode to the
Yeah, yeah. Check out
Prosper e-residency.
prospera.co or eprospera.hn. Like it really doesn't require a lawyer for you to sign up or to incorporate a company. It's really easy. It's a total blaze. Like I have 5 companies incorporated there. I pay my taxes in crypto there, so it's almost like fun. It's fun to use, almost like because I just compare it to what I had before, and like there's these automated reminders for filing your taxes. The tax code is super simple, so you can do your tax declaration in like 1 minute or something like that.
That sounds pretty compelling, honestly. I think we might need a dedicated episode just for some of that stuff. Amazing. But we'll wrap it up here today. Any final words before we go?
Thanks for having me on, Vance. This was amazing.
Awesome. Always a pleasure. This has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Again, our guest today, Niklas Anzinger from Infinita, Prospera. And guys, audience, wherever you're listening to this, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Twitter, be sure to subscribe. We put out 2 episodes a week with amazing guests like Nick, and you won't want to miss an episode. You can also send us a DM on Twitter or go to mylatinlife.com for more information. Ciao for now.